The Honorable Madam Judge Clark presiding. Presenting case number 475, The People versus the Rat.
Can the prosecution please introduce the case?
Yes, Your Honor. People rule that rodent models are inferior to that of human trials.
How does the defense plead?
The defense enters a non-guilty plea on behalf of the rat.
Is the jury ready to proceed? Wonderful. In that case, the prosecution may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people believe that when it comes to researching human diseases, the use of anything other than a human model is insufficient and causes irreparable damage to the livelihood of those whose health hangs in the balance as they wait for information about their disease and effective treatments to become available. I present Exhibit A as the first piece of evidence. This is an overview of the internationally recognized hierarchy of research evidence. I would like to direct the court's attention to the preclinical phase. This is where rodent models are used almost exclusively. As the court can see, this stage ranks only one tier higher than unregulated, unsystematic, unscientific observation. While research involving rodents may be useful for initial hypothesis testing, they are not the gold standard. That is reserved for the randomized control trial. As you move up the hierarchy, the more systematic your data collection is, and the more rigorous your methodology becomes. Now I'd like to direct the court's attention to the highest standard of medical research, RCT. Within the RCT, there are stringent guidelines for the clinical gathering of information. Very briefly, the most brilliant, effective research trial is one that is scientifically rigorous and generalizable to the real-world population. This is what medical researchers call validity, medical evidence that reflects real clinical implications and practical guidelines. RCTs ensure that confounding factors that could influence the data are minimized. This is done by randomizing the study participants to two different groups. Confounding factors, put simply, are any other variables that may play a role in explaining the observed effects for a given treatment. Examples can include age or sex. RCTs ensure there is a balance of these factors when studying the two groups. While preclinical trials are typically randomized and therefore, in theory, are able to reduce any confounders such as age and sex, they are not able to account for the genetic diversity observed in humans. Quite frankly, Your Honor, the human and rat composition is just too different. These variables don't necessarily always mean danger, but there is plenty of studies that have demonstrated the inability of preclinical trials to translate to the human population. Very clearly, despite the fact that interventions are tested on several rat models, it may not translate to practical use in humans. Studies show that only 37% of animal studies are able to translate and follow up human RCTs. Of this small percentage, half of the studies failed to replicate the effects seen in rodents. Finally, I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit B, the rat genome. Rats, while sharing 90% of DNA with humans, have been genetically altered. This means the majority of the rats in the study are modified to be genetically identical. If all of the rats are genetically altered, it cannot properly mirror what is going on in the human world, as there are many factors that create variation in the human genome. The people rest, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, are you ready to present your case?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm representing the rat, and today I'm going to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the rat is a great model for research, especially in the novel days of a hypothesis. Let's be fair here. While the prosecution did cite the benefits of the human model of research, rodents every day die for the advancement of our medical practice. Now, how do they do this, you might ask? I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit A, named Rodent Models for Human Disease Research. First, rodents are the most commonly used organism in human disease research. They have proven very useful for testing efficacy of various drug behaviors. Researchers are able to control and manipulate variables to a greater degree, and evidence shows that drug absorption in rats can be used to predict drug absorption in humans. Second, rat physiology is more correlated to most human conditions than other rodents such as mice. These conditions include breast cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Third, rats also have low housing costs, meaning the allowance of more of them into a study for every dollar spent. More rats means greater validity of the study results. Fourth, Rodents have had astronomical contributions to modern-day medicine. Everything from antidepressants to commonly used chemotherapy drugs and the cutting edge of HIV/AIDS therapies are made possible by rodent models. In fact, most modern-day understanding of disease and pharmacology wouldn't be possible without rats and their dedication to medical research. In summary, conducting research on rats is a great way to open the door into the real world of what can be seen in human trials in the future, and is an effective, low-cost method. Finally, I'd like to call on a member of the medical research community to testify on the limits of the human randomized controlled trial. Doctor, is it true that the RCT is the gold standard among researchers?
Well, it's always preferential to test therapies on the population who intends to use them. But in my years of conducting medical research, I've found human trials to be just as riddled with problems and limitations as studies using rodents.
Could you provide the court with some more context?
Sure. For example, unintended crossovers and non-compliance of the patients are some big problems. Crossovers occur when a study participant receives an intervention they were not intended to. And non-compliance is, well, humans get to walk out of a study. Rodents cannot. In summary, when we do rodent studies, we make sure they are taking the correct dosage, comply fully with the treatment regime, and they don't exactly get to walk out. These things, if not adhered to by humans in the human model studies, can cause a lot of problems for data validation and undermine or overestimate treatment effects.
Could you summarize to the court what exactly you think about human versus rat models?
Well, of course. In all my decades of work, I have found both to benefit medical research. Both have their flaws, as both you and the prosecution mentioned, but at the end of the day, rodents really serve to make sure we are conducting trials that are otherwise potentially harmful for humans.
Thank you. The defense has no further questions, Your Honor. We have heard a lot today about the importance of validity in medical research, but what the prosecution has failed to tell you is the astronomical impacts rodent models have had in revolutionizing modern medicine.
Thank you. We have now heard from both the prosecution and defense. From the deliberations today, it seems as though there is a need to determine both the merits and flaws in medical studies portrayed in the press and academic journals. I hope this trial will help the jury come to their own decision. Has the jury reached a verdict?